She wore a janitor's uniform, gloves still stained from work, standing on the edge of a runway where power and privilege ruled. Behind her roared a millionaire's private jet, a symbol of wealth and arrogance. He pointed at her like she was nothing, just another worker to belittle, just another life to step over. But what he didn't know was that she carried a truth that could shatter his pride in an instant. How could someone society dismissed as invisible bring a man of fortune to silence? This is the story the world needs to hear. For years, she had lived in the shadows of other people's wealth. Her job was simple but thankless, cleaning hangars, sweeping runways, making sure the world of the privileged remained spotless. Every morning she rose before sunrise, tied her hair neatly, and pulled on the Navy uniform that marked her place. Invisible, replaceable, unimportant in the eyes of those who passed her by. But what they didn't see was the quiet resilience behind her silence, the strength it took to carry on when the world kept reminding her where she belonged. She had dreams once, bigger than brooms and mops, but they had been buried under years of struggle and survival. On this particular evening, as the golden sky lit up the horizon and the hum of engines filled the air, she was just finishing another long shift. Her gloves still clung to the dust of the day when a sleek private jet landed before her. Out stepped a man whose name was whispered with awe, wealthy, powerful, untouchable. His eyes caught hers, and in that moment, she felt the weight of something brewing. She didn't know it yet, but this encounter would pull her into a confrontation that would test not just her patience, but her dignity. The jet door opened with a metallic hiss, and out strode the millionaire, sharp suit, polished shoes, every step radiating authority. He didn't glance at the mechanics or the crew. His gaze landed squarely on her, the janitor who stood near the tarmac, broom still in hand. To him, she was out of place, too visible in a world where she was expected to blend into the background. With a dismissive wave, he pointed, a simple gesture, but sharp enough to sting. It wasn't just about asking her to move, it was about reminding her of the unspoken hierarchy. Workers like her cleaned the floor he walked on, but they weren't meant to share the same ground. His finger, accusatory and cold, cut through the evening air like a blade. At first, she held her silence. Years of swallowing pride had taught her how to keep her head down, how to survive. But there was something different about this moment. The piercing eyes of onlookers, the arrogance in his stance, the quiet assumption that she didn't matter. Her chest tightened as whispers began to ripple through the crew nearby. Some smirked, others looked away. No one stepped forward. Then came the words, sharp and careless. "You don't belong here." They weren't shouted, but the venom in them echoed louder than any roar of engines. It wasn't just an insult. It was a sentence, a declaration of who held power and who did not. The air seemed heavier now. She felt anger rise inside her, a fire that had been smoldering for years beneath layers of silence. But anger alone wasn't enough. She knew the cost of speaking out, the risk of losing her job, of being labeled difficult, of being punished for daring to stand tall. Still, something inside her refused to bow this time. She gripped her broom tighter, as though it anchored her against the storm. Memories flashed, nights spent scrubbing floors while others dined, mornings of aching hands while the wealthy boarded flights without a second thought. And here he was, pointing at her like she was less than human. The world seemed to hold its breath. Would she step back and let the insult sink into her bones like so many before? Or would she finally let her voice break through the silence? She took a step closer, not away. The gasps of those watching signaled that something was about to unfold, something they weren't prepared for. Her eyes locked with his, steady, unflinching. For the first time, the man who had silenced so many with wealth and power found himself staring at someone who refused to shrink. And in that moment, As the hum of the jet grew louder, the real confrontation began. The air crackled with unease as the millionaire squared his shoulders, his voice rising above the noise of the engines. He wasn't used to being challenged, least of all by someone he believed beneath him. His words cut sharp, accusations of incompetence, threats of firing, taunts about her place. Each one landed like a slap, meant to humiliate, meant to remind her, and everyone watching, that power was his weapon. But she didn't flinch. Instead, she pulled a folded envelope from her pocket, documents she had carried for weeks, papers she never thought she'd have to use. With steady hands, she held them high for all to see. Safety violations, unpaid wages, and evidence of the millionaire's disregard for the very workers who kept his empire afloat. Gasps rippled through the crew. What began as a one-sided display of arrogance now shifted into something far more dangerous for him. His face flushed, not with confidence, but with panic. He lunged forward, trying to snatch the papers, his voice cracking in desperation. "You think anyone will believe you?" But it was too late. Phones were out, cameras were recording. The same ground where he once believed she didn't belong had become a stage, and she now held the spotlight. Every insult he had hurled moments before now echoed back at him, exposed for the world to see. Her heart pounded, but her voice was calm, unwavering. "This ends today." In that instant, the millionaire froze, not because of her broom or her uniform, but because of the undeniable truth now hanging in the air. For the first time, he wasn't the one in control. The silence that followed was louder than his wealth, heavier than his pride. And in that silence, the world began to turn against him. The millionaire's voice faltered as the weight of the moment crashed down on him. The once dominant man who had mocked her now stood exposed, trembling under the glare of cameras and the judgment of witnesses. He tried to laugh it off, but the silence of the crew and the unwavering eyes of the janitor told a different truth. His reign of arrogance had ended. For her, it wasn't about revenge. It was about dignity. For years she had been treated as invisible, her work unseen, her humanity overlooked. But in that instant, she proved that the power of truth and courage could outshine even the brightest lights of wealth. She walked away not as a worker defined by a uniform, but as a woman who had forced the world to acknowledge her worth. The story spread beyond the runway. It wasn't just about one janitor or one millionaire. It was about the unspoken reality faced by countless people, those who are silenced, dismissed, or humiliated simply because of their race, class, or status. Her stand became a symbol, a reminder that silence only serves the oppressor, and that even the smallest voice, when spoken with courage, can echo louder than money or power. But the question remains, how many more must endure this kind of humiliation before change becomes more than a headline? How many more must rise alone before we rise together? Her story is not just hers. It belongs to all who have been silenced, to all who still fight to be seen. And maybe, just maybe, it belongs to you too.